Throughout current-day Mexico, the average citizen is struggling to make ends meet. This is because the Mexican economy is going through a transitional period that is trying to fix itself. A transition that involves reverting back to a decentralized system of petroleum and oil that will end a 70-year-long expropriation of the resource. This transition is not easy, so the required rises in prices like goods and services, more specifically in gasoline, is making it harder and harder to afford basic items, which in turn affect the transition, since more money has to be spent on welfare programs that are supposed to help the population. It is a never-ending destructive cycle that does not permit progress. This cycle, along with other factors like corruption, foreign policy, and blatant nationalism, restrict the possibility to fundamentally help people beyond short-term solutions. The processes that are required include changing a policy implemented years ago that restricted the privatization of oil from foreign nations. The president, Enrique Peña Nieto, proposed to privatize the oil. Technically is still Mexican, but this is to let a new source of income into the country. This in turn eliminating the monopoly of oil by the Pemex company. The first stage of the reform is known as Round Zero, and it began in March of 2013, and it was completed. It mostly states that assets will be taken away from Pemex if it is not using them. If Pemex wants to keep the property it's using before it's given to foreign companies, it actually has to demonstrate that it has a way to make commercial forms of petroleum to actually keep the license that it currently holds. This Pemex proposal gives ample space in Mexico for foreign investments. Once the Pemex assets are approved, the second process begins. In Part 1 of 2, the licenses, or assets, will convert into the new contractual and fiscal arrangements for investors. This means that the government will cut spending on its energy sector to cause economic growth, which is called expansionary austerity. The expansionary fiscal contraction hypothesis predicts that under certain limited circumstances, a major reduction in government spending will expand private consumption, resulting in overall economic expansion for the whole of the country. In Part 2 of 2, the disputed areas will be transferred to the private sector through public bids. In Round 1, the rest of the land is distributed to other companies via contracts. There are 4 types of contracts that are proposed: service, profit, production, and license contracts. The service contracts are paid in cash. These contracts basically rent the land to do anything on it. The contracts, like production and profit agreements, are similar with only one major difference. In profit sharing, the production title never actually goes to the contractor, and the government sells the oil and gas within the country, which the capital gained from that oil and gas will go to a fund to pay the contractor for their share in the profits. Production contracts let the foreigner get some production assistance from the government to focus on the other aspects of business management, but lets the company share profits with the country too. The license contracts are similarly structured to concessions. A concession is an agreement to be the only supplier or producer, and the concessionaire pays a fee to the government. Basically, the options for expanding within the country are limited unless one can outbid another company for another contract. What is happening right now is affecting everyone, for good or for bad. Riots are happening, people are dying, and progress seems lost. In Mexico City, January 5th of 2017, one huge riot in particular led to 4 deaths, 300 looted stores, and the arrests of more than 700 people. Mexicans are furious about the 20% gas price hike, obviously. This has still not led to the acknowledgement of public sentiment, which has had a damaging effect to the presidency of Peña Nieto. The president still went ahead with the deregulated price scheme, which lets the prices be determined by international standards. As an excuse not to lower gas prices, the administration has said that keeping gas prices artificially low would mean taking money away from the poorest Mexicans and giving it to those who have the most. The new energy reform will be inviting foreign companies to invest in the country's oil and infrastructure. In January 31st of 2018, Mexico held its most important auction since 2013. This has been estimated to bring in a potential of 800 million in data sales. Private companies have been invited to survey the land and prepare their bids in an effort to auction off the property. Cut to February 1st of 2018, and the presidential favorite for the future election, Manuel López Obrador, has called to review the oil tender results from the public bids. This move will make him a populist, pandering to the public sentiment and threatening to dismantle more than 5 years' worth of work that the previous administration has done. This will probably calm the country down. This short-term solution to the riots and the murders of the past year will probably be effective. But just like any short-term solution, it will bring in a new problem of how to address the now fractured state of the country's energy sector. This reform can bring in much-needed revenue to the country. Now the backlash of the financing and the timing of the reform will probably bring in its own demise by the very people it was designed to help.